you're in business, you probably have read articles in the Harvard Business Review. And not so long ago, or maybe because I'm old enough to remember, the Harvard Business Review would rarely publish anything on social purpose. And around 2010 is when we started seeing some articles, including this one I've assigned to students a couple of times. And I love the first line, consumers increasingly expect brands to play a social role, to have a social purpose beyond just the basic benefits they promise of delivering a good product and solving your problem, right? So I think that speaks a lot about how consumers are changing, are becoming more demanding, and expect brands that they love, that they support, to do more than just make money and deliver a good product. They like the brands to embrace a social purpose. And more recently, 2 years ago, this is another interesting article that this time was based on a large-scale study looking at high-growth company. And they found that most high-growth companies use a social purpose that helps them do a couple of things, including, as you see here on the screen, redefining the playing field, right? Redrawing the rules of the game of how you compete. And then the second purpose is to reshape the promise you make to consumers, to reshape the value proposition in such a way that it mobilizes consumers. But guess what? It also mobilizes employees as well. When you're an employee and you feel you're contributing to something bigger than just making money for the owners, it can be quite stimulating. And then just as the pandemic hit, this particular article appeared again in Harvard Business Review. Companies must go beyond random acts of humanitarianism or acts of kindness. And I love this quote by the CEO of Starbucks. If we haven't changed when we come out of this pandemic, then we've missed an opportunity to do better. And I think that speaks volume. A more somber note in this article from Forbes, basically, if we don't change, capitalism will starve humanity by 2050. And I think, I don't want to be alarmist, but in this article, it's interesting to see that some people are starting to ask questions. Maybe there's ways we can soften the negative consequences or effects of capitalism so that it works for everybody and not just a handful of rich people or rich countries. And I think it's an idea that's gaining a lot of grounds. In this particular article, I love this. They've looked at the brands that the Dutch giant Unilever owns, and they found out that brands that stand for something grow twice as fast as other brands. So I guess what it's saying is there's a way to embrace a purpose and at the same time still do well, still fuel growth, still fuel profitability. And there's no shortage of examples of big companies that have figured that out, whether it's just for show or it's truly embracing a purpose. Just a few examples here to illustrate before I move it, or I get back to Elfi and let her tell us about her great path to success. Nestlé, for example, just last September announced it was going to invest $1.3 billion to support regenerative agriculture as a way to fight climate change, as a way to restore the health of our soils, which are in such terrible shape, but also as a way to return more money and support the farmers that are the very source of what we eat and consume. Campbell Soup has an accelerator where they help to start businesses. This is a particular B Corp company they started, the Soulful Project, a little bit like Tom's Shoes. For each bowl that you buy, this little breakfast kind of cereal with old grains or ancient grains. You can see it there, oats, quinoa, flax, and so on. But for each one you buy, they give one to a food bank so that it can feed people in need, homeless people, and so on. And you don't have to look to big companies. You can have a smaller impact on a smaller scale, but just as profound. Example of a local company, Loop, which helps to reduce food waste with delicious juice and now beer. Of course, they got into the beer business not so long ago. And this is one of my favorites in the southwest of Montreal, close to my home. It's called the Hungry Box. For each sandwich and salad combo you buy, they give one to a homeless person or a person in need. And I love their mission. Our mission is to reduce and eliminate hunger in our cities. So just to show that you can have an impact at a smaller scale, but just as profound, just as important. And of course, there are now, we've evolved to such a point that there are now recipes, so to speak, to create or fashion a brand with purpose. This particular website I love. They have really top materials, sustainablebrands.com. You can see here 5 practices to activate and leverage the purpose in your organization. So just a quick taste of to illustrate how, you know, embedding a purpose in what you do as a brand can get you a long way and fuel growth in addition to bring profit. And that's quite true in the chocolate business. We have a living example with us in our guests. And just to situate things, this is the environment we face when we buy chocolate. And maybe as a way to hear from the folks in the room, I see about 30 names there: Daniela, Clarine, Jake, Faustine, maybe a throw out to you. What is your favorite chocolate when you're in that environment? And of course, I probably bias things there by focusing so much on Lindt. Just a picture from a farmer pre, I think I was in, or something like that. Anybody wants to chime in, either with the chat or by unmuting themselves and throwing it out? What's your favorite chocolate brand? Big Turk, Khalil. Oh, Khalil likes the big chunk, Big Turk. Okay. Anybody else? I'm just reading off. Hershey's. Okay. Dark chocolate from Theo Broma. Yeah, that's a local Jeff de Bruges. Yeah, Theo Broma. Lindt.
Sorry to interrupt. I used to buy from the Lindt because of the prices that you're showing here. So I'm out of breath. I ran to my freezer to get this chocolate bar that I have actually been trying. It's Whistler, because they seem to be a fair trade brand and I wanted to support that. So that's my new favorite.
Interesting. So yes, typically when I give a talk or when students get out of my class, they tend to be hungry because I show a lot of food images. I'm just reading off the chat here. Toblerone, Lindt, Intense Orange, Toblerone again, Ferrero Rocher. Okay, all sorts of good brands. And just before I let Elfi introduce where she fits in this picture, I just want to talk a little bit about the structure of the chocolate industry. Of course, we all eat chocolate, but sometimes we don't suspect how the industry is structured or shaped. It's billions of dollars around the world. And at the entry level, you've got snacks and confectionery, which can vary in prices. You have everything from Kit Kat, Reese's, Lindt kind of truffles, and we say confectionery and snacks and not necessarily chocolate because it's mixed with other ingredients at different price points. You have the Godiva and the Ferrero Rocher, and then at different price points you have things like Kit Kats and so on. And then at the more mass or entry level, you have more bar format. We find them often at Costco or places like that. You're in the $2 range or just about, right? And at the premium level, now you're moving into the $3 to $5, $6 about, where you have brands like this. Dolphin from Belgium. 1848 is actually from Poulain, which is owned by Cadbury, which is now owned by Kraft, part of the consolidation of the industry. And then we're getting to Elfi, the super premium level, where you have brands like these, names that you would know if you're really into dark, super premium chocolate. And now we're into the $10 and up for those kinds of bars. And Elfi can explain to us a little bit more what goes into this. So I'll turn it over to Elfi to tell us a little bit about how you started the company, what brought you to do this, and to take us on that journey you've been on since 2017. You need to unmute, Elfi. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And okay, I will share my story. So Qantu is started in 2017, and that is because we started Qantu because I need to be in contact, in a strong connection with my country, that is Peru, and also because it's a project of my life. Qantu, first of all, Qantu is a love story because it's the love for my country, for its people, for my husband, Maxime, because Maxime is my partner in life and in business too. And only start when we go to Peru just for visit the family. We go to the plantation of cacao, and there, yes, when we meet the farmer say us that yes, this is a cacao beans plant. The cacao plantation is biologic, is fair trade, but you know, in Peru, you can find a very precious variety of cocoa beans in the north, in the south, and maybe you can help us or work to preservation in cocoa beans variety. This is an ancestral variety of cacao. At this time, I think it was the spark to start with chocolate project. After this visit to the cocoa plantation, we come back in Montreal, and we started to consume more fine chocolate, premium chocolate. We started to study about cacao beans, about how is made the chocolate. And in 2016, I lost my job because I am engineer, and I lost my job. And at this time, the big decision was I am looking for another job, or I start my dream, my own project. So I start my own project, and after I start to go to the other plantation, I visited cooperatives. We taste a lot of cocoa beans, and we developed our own way to make chocolate. We at the first time we buy a small machines only to make taste, and in 2017 when I start, we send two bars to the competition international. No, it's the Academy of Chocolate Awards in London, and just to know how is our chocolate, to have a feedback, and to know how is our chocolate in comparison with other chocolates in the same industry. And we won 3 medals, so 2 gold medals for the best chocolate in the world for dark chocolate, and 1 silver. And I think that was the fact when we decided, okay, we will go with all our energy, with all our I don't know how to say, avec toute nos forces. So there Qantu started, and after 5 years, we continue with the same values. So our values to buy directly from cooperatives of cocoa beans. So now we have 4 cooperatives, and we are the only Canadian chocolate maker who buy directly from cooperatives 100% of our cacao beans.
Let me just interrupt you there, Elfi, because I'm not sure that people understand how important that is as you embrace a purpose and how you think of how you can make it happen. In the chocolate business, most cocoa beans go through, whether they're from Ivory Coast or Trinidad, they often go through international brokers, right? And they sell you these cocoa beans by the ton. And what you're talking about here, and that's why I put the little in Piura, do you want to talk a little bit about what's so special about those beans and where they actually come from in Peru, just for people, just if people don't understand why that is important?
Okay, so when we started, as I said, when the cocoa farmers say us that in Peru there are a lot of varieties of Carlum cacao. For example, in the north of Peru, we have the white cacao beans. This is a special variety where the cocoa beans are white, but the chocolate, when we make the chocolate is very fruity. It's like it's not like a chocolate of your childhood. When it's not the chocolate, the traditional chocolate. It's a
And if I'm
chocolate that tastes completely different. It's like is my my friends say is the champagne du chocolat.
ah,
Champagne du chocolat. C'est the small black dress of the chocolate. You know?
and if I'm holding a package of Gran Blanco here in front of me, that's where those beans would come from, right?
Yeah, exactly. For example, just for this kind of cacao, for example, in a standard plantation of cocoa beans, for example, anywhere in Ecuador, for a standard cacao, 1 hectare of the, I don't know, in an area of 1 hectare give us 2,000 kilo of cacao beans. For Gran Blanco, in 1 hectare give us only 800 kilo of cacao beans. So the production is instead is como the half, but the quality is completely different.
It's out of this world. I'll fess up. This is my favorite chocolate. I just put a piece in my mouth, and every time I always have a bar on my desk. And every time I take a piece, it's just wow. It's just wow. It's not too bitter. It's well balanced. It's refreshing. You really feel there's almost a floral and a bit of a citrusy aftertaste that is just so nice. And from the white cocoa beans, it's just and I think some people got a few bars of Elfi's chocolate, if I'm not mistaken. There were little goodie bags that went around, and you included some of your bars, Elfi. I think there were different flavors, but I think some people, Fustine mentions it's delicious, and you really, when you let it melt and you just take your time to savor it slowly, it's just so wow. It's just, you know what it reminds me of? I grew up on a farm where there were goats, and as a kid, I would play with the goats and I would watch them eat flowers, because goats, go in the field and they eat everything, literally everything. And I remember as a kid, I used to wonder, what is it like to eat a flower? And when I ate your cocoa, it's so floral, and it took me back to my childhood. I'm like, I wonder if this is what the goats were tasting, but it's just so floral, so light, it's just I know it's a weird mental analogy or mental association. Now, normally, Elfi, around the world, the size of a cocoa farm is very, very small, right? We're not talking about big farms like in the Western Canadian prairies, where it's, very, very big farms for cereals or soybeans or things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about the reality of those farmers, those communities you help?
For sure. When we started Qantu, we think that we will make chocolate from around the world. But when I read the cover, my own country, I read the cover. When I go there, it's not necessary. In Peru, we have a lot of varieties, and each region have their own reality. For example, Gran Blanco in Piura, the farmer have maybe 1 hectare, maybe 2. This is the more richest. 2. For example, in the south of Peru, or in the center of Peru, one farmer, the average is 4 hectare, 5 hectare. So they have a lot more. In south of Peru is a wild culture. So maybe they have 10 hectare, but with cacao, the cacao is more, I don't know how to say, le cacao est plus éloigné. Les arbres sont loin.
And I think that's an important variable to understand for people who don't know the chocolate industry. For the benefit of those who don't know, the average size of a cocoa farm around the world is 5 hectares, which is fairly small, right? You don't get rich, you don't live lavishly off 5 hectares of cocoa. And in some countries, it's even less, as Elfi just mentioned. It's a little bit smaller in some countries. In others, it's larger. In the Dominican Republic, you can see cocoa farms that are a little bit bigger. But generally, it's what we call an economy of small holders, so small farms. And the reality of that is you can be victim of climate change, of bad weather one year. There's a lot of diseases also in cocoa farms, witch's broom and fungus that can attack the cocoa. You want to explain what we're looking at, Elfi, the cocoa pods, and how that becomes chocolate?
How becomes chocolate? Okay, so for example, here we can see the fruit. When we cut the fruit, is only the pulp. This pulp is very, very sweet. For example, we use only heirloom cacao. The heirloom cacao is sweeter than a standard cacao. The standard cacao is like a passion fruit, not very sweet. It's more acid. So okay, when this pulp that is very sweet, that helps to ferment. Why we ferment the cocoa beans? Because to develop more flavor, and also to kill
the germ.
Kill the germ. But more is for develop the flavor. And after but fermentation is a big point to develop a type of chocolate. For example, in the same place, you can ferment two types of different beans. No.
The same bean, but different.
Okay. For example, a fermentation, 5 days fermentation versus 7 days fermentation give us a very different flavor of chocolate.
So the length of the fermentation. So for example, with the Gran Blanco, how long do you ferment the cocoa beans?
4 days. It's the
4 days.
Yeah, it depends the temperature.
Yeah.
But for example, in the good time when it's very hot, 4 days is okay.
I just wanted, because some people made a comment on the chat box that it's a little bit like wine, except in the case of wine, fermentation takes longer. In the case of cocoa beans, it can be anywhere between 2 days to 7 days. So it can vary a lot, right?
Yeah, for example, an Ecuadorian will say no, fermentation should be in 7 days because we need 80 or 90% of fermentation. So that is not good, because every place, every farmer have the recipe to ferment.
Their own secret, their own recipe.
Yeah.
And after fermentation, we dry them, and then
the dry is another point to develop flavors.
Okay.
There are many ways to, not many, but at least 5 ways to dry cacao.
Okay, let's not get too technical here. I just want people to appreciate just how much work. We've got the work of the farmers, harvesting the cocoa pods, then fermenting, then drying, then the beans eventually get to you, right? After they've been dried, they're packed, they come to you in small batch. And then what do you do with just very quickly, the key steps, right? You roast them.
Here we roast, we know, we grind, refine, tempering, and packaging.
Okay, so but and you went quick because I asked you to, but there's a lot of steps in transforming this, what Maxime is smelling, into a delicious cocoa bar. It's a lot of work for you, a lot of work for the farmers. Those farmers are small farms, so you don't necessarily get rich. So then what's kind of interesting, when I asked before what people buy in terms of chocolate, maybe the question I should have asked, what do you look for when you're buying chocolate? When you're at the store and you're faced with all these packaging, what is it that floats your boat? What is it that gets your attention? And I'll just put up some examples of premium chocolate here. I didn't put Elfi's packaging, it's coming up next, but maybe as a call out to folks in the room, when you're faced with a display, how are you persuaded, or what sort of things are you looking for? Victoria, hand up. Victoria's hand went up very quickly. Go ahead.
So as a chocolate, like a person who eats chocolate myself, consumer, I would say, I'm always torn between what exactly the company represents. We hear so much about like Nestlé and Hershey's using child labor, like human trafficking to get their cocoa beans. And it always raises the question to me is, where is the cocoa coming from? And at what cost, and at what someone's cost this chocolate's being made at? And so when I'm looking at buying chocolate, that's really where I'm looking, the main thing I'm looking for is exactly where is this cocoa bean coming from, and is it fair trade, is it not? And it's very hard to know because they're not transparent about that. So usually I try to find those labels, like those fair trade labels on them. And that's what actually was going to be a question for me, because clearly I see here from Elfi's chocolate that it is from a resourceful, like, how do I say this? It's from a sustainable crop, right? Like where you're getting your cocoa beans from Elfi seems to be very social responsible and whatnot. However, why is it that there's no label for the fair trade on your chocolate bar?
Well, hold that thought, because that was going to be my next question, except I wanted to get to other people who've been writing things in the chat box. And it's true that certain companies, Hershey and some of the bigger ones, very often will buy beans from around the world that all get mixed, or from different plantations, from different parts, unless they have a single origin or something that's unique. So very often you don't really know where it came from and what were the conditions of the farmers and the supply chain. In the chat box, Faustine wrote that she's looking at percentage. Faustine, what percentage would that be? Well, and I think MJ said the same thing. So Faustine, what is that percentage?
Well, I really like dark chocolate, and I usually look for about 70% and up. And just like Natalie wrote in the chat earlier, you know, it's good quality chocolate when the dark chocolate isn't super bitter. And I totally agree with that. When I was tasting the Qantu, it's like the perfect kind, because at 70%, you would expect it to be very dark, very bitter, but it's super subtle and it's soft, and I really like that. So
and which one did you get, Faustine? What does it say on your packaging?
Cerise et prune.
Ah, cerise et no, that's the Moropon, I think.
Yeah, it's the Moropon.
Well then, yes, the Moropon 70%.
Okay, nice. All right, you enjoyed that. Good to know. MJ wrote, yes, exactly. I guess it has to do with percentage as well. Natalie wrote the origin of the cocoa, the country, where's it coming from? And Olivia writes, I often look at the packaging material. So is it plastic? Is it cardboard? Is it recyclable, recycled, and so on? Olivia, you've had your hand up. I'm so sorry. Go ahead. I didn't need to steal your thunder.
I just wanted to talk about the materials, because I feel like plastic is usually a lot cheaper to use, and it's just like a no-brainer for companies that don't really care. But then like that's kind of an easy tell for me, kind of like the fair trade label is if the packaging is like easily recyclable, because it means the company kind of like took that extra step to make sure that the packaging is also included in what the brand represents.
So it's interesting that you look not just at the chocolate, but what it comes in, you know, the packaging. I think more and more people are doing just that. What I wanted to illustrate, and that's why I put those bars here. Most bars have a standard format. They may vary in weight. So you have, 85 grams, 90 grams, 70 grams, but basically it's a rectangular. And in the food business, not just the chocolate business, we call the front end the facing. And the facing, of course, is a surface that you have to put things on, to print things on that can attract the attention of consumers and hopefully seduce them in buying your brand. But it's a fairly small space to be telling the entire story. Look, Elfi was talking to us for about 10 or 12 minutes about how she started the company and all the wonderful things about Peru. I mean, how do you print all of that in one label? Years ago, when I met the people from Giddy Yo-Yo, the one at the top left there, I sort of laugh at the beginning because look at how many logos they have on there. They have 6 logos. And at some point I was like, well, what happens if you want to put a 7 or an 8 one? How many logos can you put? And I say it jokingly, but where I wanted to sort of engage folks who are in the room is, you know, how do you communicate that purpose? For Elfi, she said it, it's a labor of love. It's the love for my country, a love for my partner, giving back to Peru, helping those farmers, you know, take care of those indigenous beans and those heirloom type of beans, because if we don't, they get lost and they disappear forever, because the Hershey's of the world and the Cadbury's and Nestle's, they don't use heirloom beans. They use beans that are higher yield, don't cost as much money. And so how do you write all of that? How do you communicate all of that? I don't know if anyone has advice, suggestions, ideas. How do you get that across so that customers will care? Maybe not as much as Elfi about Peru, but how do you toy at people's heartstring and say, hey, you know, come on the journey with us, buy our chocolate, and at the same time, it's helping those communities in Peru. And I'll loop back to Elfi to see how she's been able to make all those pieces fit, because she's been having quite a bit of success. I know she's often in Peru. Daniela, go ahead, some ideas.
Yeah, so lately I've seen a lot in stores that there's a lot of brands that like to put like videos on like walls in the stores showing like, I know this like from A&W, for example, like for their coffee as well, like they show how the coffee beans were collected and everything so that people know and are aware of the story. And then to follow with that, they continue on social media. So to make sure that everybody is aware of their story so that they don't necessarily have to put it on the packaging, but that on the packaging, like after all the story that Elfi shared with us, I'm sure that a lot of us can see a lot of little images on the packaging and relate it to the story itself.
Okay, that's a good idea. And I think you drew our attention to those little icons or images on the packaging. And even I'm looking at it, and I don't think I've ever attended or looked carefully at everything that they mean. So maybe Elfi can tell us what the idea is with those packaging. And I can put back maybe the image of the different packaging from Qantu if for folks who haven't seen them all. And this is just there's other varieties that Qantu makes. Of course, I made a little selection for this slide. Elfi, you want to tell us a little bit about your packaging and how you try to tell your story through the packaging and through other things that you and Maxime do?
Yeah, for sure. So when we started with only 3 bars. So one of them is Moropon, Gran Blanco, and Chuncho, but the packaging was the same. The only the message we can pass was we changed the source, the cocoa pods, the color of cocoa pods. So that is why we changed the color only of that. But after when we started to sell, people say us, your chocolate are. Every chocolate is very, very special, that every chocolate should ¿cómo se dice? Raconter une histoire.
Should have its own packaging and tell a story for each variety or each type. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we try this idea. So we start with illustration. But business is going so fast that we don't have time to change the first bars. So we start with Route de la Soie, for example.
This one here, right?
Route de la Soie illustration was made by my friend who is Iranian. So this is a Torah. This is the center of, it's an illustration of a center of the tapis Iranian.
Like a rug, an Iranian, it's an illustration that represents patterns of Iranian rugs. Okay, okay. And it's delicious. I've had all your chocolates, but this is particularly delicious. It's very good. Yeah, okay.
So, and after, for example, Palo Santo, we will illustrate the tree, that the tree is in a place, very hot place, is in Piura, and it's a sacred tree. So, you know, people is like
Oh yes, making a okay. For those who don't know, you want to explain quickly what Palo Santo is and how it gets into the chocolate, because and I'll just say a quick story. I was visiting Elfi a little while ago, and someone came in the boutique and says, "Oh, Elfi is in the back. She's smoking something." And I thought, I had this vision of, you know, I know Elfi doesn't smoke, and I'm like, what is she smoking? So you want to tell the story?
Yes. So yes, Palo Santo is a tree, a sacred tree in Peru. But I didn't know that here is very trendy. So when we started with Palo Santo, it was for a project that we have with the community of Doctor in Piura. It's the same community who grows the Gran Blanco. So this community started a project to preserve Palo Santo, because Palo Santo now is in a problem de deforestation.
Yeah.
So now the community start to plant more trees in a place who in private forest. It's a private forest only of the community, you know.
Okay.
So there they start to preserve many other varieties of trees.
And so you bring the wood and basically you smoke the cocoa bean, or you infuse
we smoke the chocolate, the final chocolate.
So you make the chocolate and then you smoke it with that sacred wood. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. It is. I loved it. It's delicious. It is very reminiscent of the smell of Palo Santo. So if you're curious and you've never tasted it, you can visit Elfi. I see the time go by and I could listen to you all day, Elfi, but I sort of want to make sure that people can ask you questions if they have. I know that people can visit you at the boutique if they want, but I'd want to give an opportunity to those who are in the room, if you have questions for Elfi, to just go ahead, because I think we're about to wrap up. I was told I had a hard stop at 4 o'clock because you had a cocktail or a networking event. So anyone's got questions for Elfi? Victoria, go ahead.
So my question is, well, I'm just really happy, Jordan, that you really took the time to separate where Elfi's chocolate falls compared to other chocolates. I think that distinction is really important. But this raises my question is, Elfi, how do you feel about these other chocolate brands not showing as much maybe passion or interest in, maybe not passion, but like care for the cocoa industry in general?
Ok, si j'ai bien compris, il veut savoir comment je me sens face à des autres chocolatiers qui ne montrent pas assez d'intérêt.
Exactement, d'intérêt ou de passion, ou juste d'inquiétude envers l'industrie du cacao en général.
Ok. It's very sad for the industry of chocolate, but as an entrepreneur, is that allow me to be different. So for me, it's okay. As an entrepreneur, that helped me to be different, to be unique. But for the chocolate industry, is very sad, because it's not sustainable. If more of chocolate makers could be more authentic, maybe in the source the world would be better, because the big problem these days in the chocolate industry is cómo vas a pasar la releve, you know, because be farmer is not cool. Now the farmers are 60 years, 50 years old, and for the younger people is difficult to be a farmer in the future. So this is a big problem. If, for example, for us, when we work with the cooperatives, there are two of our four cooperatives work a lot for the releve. I don't know how you say releve in English. The next generation, for the next generation. The next generation, for example, the next generation is starting to make chocolate, starting to have more skills in chocolate industry. It only to be more proud that only be a farmer. But in the chocolate industry, that could be better if other chocolate makers pass the message to the people. Maybe could be better.
I'll just step in, and Elfi, because we're going to start running out of time. There's a few comments in the chat box I want to get to. Indeed, thinking about the next generation, every farmer around the world, not just chocolate farmers, but here in Quebec, there is a generational problem. It's a big issue. A couple of comments. Danielle in the chat box asks, what were the biggest obstacles to starting such a business that in fact is a bit global, because you're bringing things from Peru? Was it the export laws, the marketing, the convincing the farmers to be part of your success? What were some of the obstacles? C'est quoi les obstacles les plus pressants quand vous avez parti la business?
Les obstacles, le début, when we start, it was for sure the financing, and after some years we are okay. But now the biggest obstacles are the how we are. Nous sommes en train de grandir.
You're growing. You're growing quickly. Yeah.
We are growing quickly. Now it become more technical, so we need more certification. For example, HACCP. Now we sell to Whole Foods in Canada.
Whole Foods, yeah.
So for the next year, we need HACCP. Maybe the ASIA, the agence, the Canadian agents for the alimentary industries are more attentive of us.
Yeah,
so
getting all your certificates from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. HACCP, for those who don't know, it's hazard and critical point analysis for the food industry, making sure that everything is safe and clean and all that kind of stuff. So now as you grow, you have all different kinds of problems, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And for example, when we change at this local, we think it's too big. Now we are here, it's too small.
So on that note, I'll just share some of the comments in the chat box. MJ writes, amazing story, love what you do. Khalil was kind, good for you and following your dream, Elfi. And for those, I think, who you were talking about the new boutique or where you are, that's what we're looking at. It's in between the VO and PNF metro stations. You're open most days of the week, I think, if people want to get your chocolate, but you can also find Qantu Chocolate in high-end gourmet boutiques around Montreal, I think, right?
No, excuse me.
We can find your chocolate in other boutiques in Montreal, right? État de Choc, on Saint-Laurent.
État de Choc.
Atwater Market over here, where I live.
There are many places. Also in many marchés, comme le marché Jean Talon, Atwater.
Okay. So I think that's it for us. We've already gone. It's 4:03. I realize I said at the beginning, Elfi and I are the last thing between you and a well-deserved cocktail and wrap up to today. So I'll let Olivia or Sarah or whoever is taking over now.
Perfect. Thank you so much to the both of you for joining us. It was so interesting to hear your story and just learn more about the chocolate industry and marketing and everything. Also, thank you so much to all the participants who stayed with us today. I think it was a really good day. Learned a lot of things. Like he said, there is the networking cocktail. It's on a different platform. I can send the link here if you want to join us there from 4 to 5. And yeah, I think that's it from me. So thank you again to everyone for coming and making this so successful.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Nice
much.
seeing everyone.